The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and good evening to everyone who's joining us live for our presentation to learn more about serving in the WorldTeach India program. Welcome also to everyone who may be joining us through a recorded version of the broadcast at a later date. My name is Liz Blanco, and I'm the Learning and Professional Development Director here at WorldTeach. I work out of the U.S. office based in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I'm excited to have everyone this evening as we take a deeper look into the India Summer Program. Now, we've conducted webinars for our India program before, but today we're bringing you a slightly new format. We'll still be discussing program overviews and program logistics, and we'll save time at the end to answer any questions that you may have. But today, we'll also spend a considerable amount of time viewing the program through the eyes and words of a WorldTeach India alumni who's joining us today. She'll bring you on her journey in the Ladakh region and give you a clearer version of what your experience as a WorldTeach India volunteer may look like. So to get started, I'm pleased to introduce the two others who will be leading this call with me. We have Behzad Larry and Bindi Parikh. Behzad is joining us from India, where he owns Voyager Expedition, and he oversees the WorldTeach India program on the ground. Hello, Behzad. And also joining us, we have the WorldTeach alumna, Bindi, who served as a volunteer educator this past summer and is a current master's candidate at Columbia University. So welcome to both of you.
Hello, thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Behzad, I'd like to go ahead and hand over the mic to you to get us started off on the program overview.
Absolutely. Just gonna go over here. So, Jule to everyone. Jule is the word that all of our volunteers through the summer get to know really well. It stands in for hello, goodbye, thank you, please, and can be used in many other varieties of ways. The program is based entirely in the region of Ladakh, which is in the Trans-Himalayas of India, up in the very, very north, bordered by China to the east and Pakistan to the north and the west. The program is, since it's in these absolutely enormous and beautiful mountains, is oftentimes also focused on climate change. Besides just giving you an overview of education in this part of the world and how students have access to knowledge. Through the 10 months, sorry, not the 10 months, through the 3 months of summer that volunteers are here, we try to give them a really good understanding of the location of the region and of the global politics that really take place over here, besides showing them what education policy needs to do to change to make it a more competitive place for students who are still in school. The journey begins when you arrive in Delhi, India's capital, and you fly up about an hour the next day after arrival to Leh. There we acclimatize for a few days, and then we basically begin orientation, which lasts a week. In orientation, volunteers learn about the educational context they'll be in. They learn about how schools over here function. They learn about how the different school types deal with each other, whether they're public schools or private schools. They learn about how teachers are educated to become teachers, and they learn about how invested the communities are in making sure that their kids can get a good education. Through orientation, we also impart certain language skills, cultural skills, and just overall set volunteers up to be able to function properly within the time that they're there, and to sort of minimize the alien feeling that you might get when you arrive in a new place, so that they can be a little more effective in the short time they have. Bindi, would you like to jump in and begin talking a bit about what you thought the experience was like, and then I'll sum up the end of the program after you're done.
Sure. Um, so, hi everyone. So I did the Ladakh Summer Program this past summer, and I think I've learned in Ladakh specifically more life skills than I have anywhere else. And my interest in education grew while working in a Title I school in New Hampshire. I just wanted to give a little background before I jump into all the things that I did in Ladakh. So, backtracking to New Hampshire. So basically, in New Hampshire, I worked on students' ABCs, which is attendance, behavior, and curriculum. And currently, I'm a student at Teachers College, which is in Columbia University, and I am studying education policy. So I'll first give a brief, well, kind of brief background on teaching in Ladakh, and I just wanted to give you a logistical sense of how that will go about, and then I'll give you another summary about the life and the culture in Ladakh. And these aspects are both worth mentioning, so please bear with me. So first we had our orientation in Nubra Valley, and the entire region of Ladakh is surrounded by massive Himalayan mountains, and it's a very breathtaking place to be. So in Nubra Valley, we learned the basics of Bodhi, which is the Ladakhi language, and the fundamentals of the Ladakhi culture. Soon we made our way to Zanskar, which is a different part of Ladakh, and here's where we spent most of our time teaching. So there were two other volunteers with myself, Riker and Ellie, and we taught at a private school. We were teaching 6 days a week, Monday to Saturday, and it was pre-K to 8th grade. And at this school, holidays were actually canceled because we were there. The Zanskari locals wanted to make the most of our visit because the students' English was very poor, and also many of the teachers' English was as well. So every day we would teach English and basic computer skills to the teachers and students. It was primarily beneficial working with the teachers because their knowledge could translate for students generations to come. We held daily teacher workshops where we would also teach grammar, research, and writing. Every 2 or 3 days, the volunteers and I would write lesson plans together for the teacher and computer classes. Because we could not access internet in Ladakh, we simply planned the lessons based on the prior knowledge we had about basic English grammar, the basics of the computer, and essay structuring. We held weekly exams for the teachers to see if they understood the material. And I do recommend preparing a handful of lessons from the States before going to India. This will help you to engage with the students and the teachers with more material information because it's supposed to last you for 4 to 5 weeks of teaching. So whatever material you have in your hand and in your head is the only information that you could use. So as you might have seen on the earlier slide, we brought our own laptops and we used the school generator for the one desktop that they had, which was a total of 70 students. So when holding our kids' computer classes, there were 6 to 9 kids on one computer. They all surrounded the computer, very eager to learn the components of it, including Excel, Word, and PowerPoint. It was many of the students and teachers' first time on a computer. We even had to teach them what spacebar and enter was. So even so, towards the end of the 3 weeks, the students were able to create their own climate change PowerPoint presentation. They were very happy to put this project together, and they would actually teach the other classes how to do the same. So in our individual classes, we taught the fundamentals of English. We were able to form lessons on whichever topic we deemed to be the most beneficial. A few examples of what I taught was a song called This Little Light of Mine. I also emphasized them learning the words for different emotions, common places, and activities that they would be able to relate to because life is very different over there than here. So trying to connect things that surround them into the curriculum was very beneficial. After our last day of school, the teachers and parents of our school gave the volunteers and I a farewell party. The school girls did a dance for us while the locals were playing on the daman, which is the Ladakhi drums. They did more than we ever expected to receive, and the gesture was so generous. During this farewell, we became the panelists and gave our advice to the parents who came to the school. specifically to hear us talk. We discussed the fundamentals of education and how students could learn at home as well as school. And all our words were translated by our guide, which was Rigzi. And many of the local education would stop after the 8th grade. A few of them became emotional when talking about this because they weren't able to receive the education they dreamed of having. Reflecting back on my experiences, I do know that my concentration in Columbia University with a US education policy will compare with my experiences in Ladakh, even though there are stark differences to be noted within the schools. A low-income school in America can be similar to a high-income school in Ladakh. To ensure our effectiveness, we focused on teacher instruction and the importance of deregulation. We heard that the superintendent of the schools in Zanskar actually very rarely made visits to the schools. So this hinders the communication between the different levels in the bureaucracy. And I do believe parents, teachers, peers, the members of society assist to create an uplifting educational environment. So as WorldTeach volunteers, if we can, like for us talking to the parents and teachers and students, was able to create that kind of community where everyone could learn. Now I'm gonna jump into life in Ladakh. So this is primarily how you'll be living for the time being that you're there. So it was a dramatic change in lifestyle compared to the US, particularly hygienically. In the 3 weeks we were in Zanskar, I took a bath 3 times, though they're trying to implement new hygienic things over there, so it'll be okay. But so heated water was not found too frequently, and we often use a compost toilet where we would use sand as a way to flush. And the locals would use this manure for the gardens and farms. Everything in Ladakh is used very carefully, and rarely does anything go to waste. Even electricity there only worked for 3 hours between 7:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. And I realized my phone addiction did drop dramatically after coming back to the States, since there was only one landline in the village, in our Zanskar village, that could connect to others in India. At first, though these things seemed challenging, it was more of an awakening experience because we were also surrounded by the incredible Ladakh beauty. The challenges always seem to become minuscule, and I learned a lot about myself. So never have I been completely immersed in nature and in a new culture. The Himalayan mountains wrap around this entire region, and the vastness of the mountains makes one realize how small you really are. And Tibetan Buddhism also strongly influences Ladakh region. And because of this, there are many monasteries in every district. We at least saw 10 to 15 monasteries at our time in Ladakh. We even encountered many 6-year-old Buddhist monks. They become monks by being chosen by older monks, which are called lamas. And the harmony among the Buddhist and Muslim religions is so great that it seems almost undifferential. Overall, Ladakh is like the ideal utopia, I would say. Throughout our time in Ladakh, we were also immersed in the culture. We did yak irrigation, we milked a cow, wore the Ladakhi traditional outfits, attended a Ladakhi wedding, ate Ladakhi food such as momos, which is similar to dumplings. We held a lot of baby animals, met nomadic people, and hiked many mountains throughout. We also talked to the oldest man in our village and discussed climate change, which is a huge topic that where we can bring from America to Ladakh. So he said, the oldest man said that the glaciers are rapidly melting, and in a few decades it could disappear. So this would be detrimental for their community because they would then have to relocate because their water supply relies on glacier streams running across the villages. So if the streams are not there, then they'll have to find another place to live. And all these experiences have influenced the way I react to situations back in my US home. I did experience the reverse culture shock that was discussed. Everything suddenly feels much more excessive and unneeded. For example, taking multiple baths in a day or checking our phones every 20 minutes is just an unnecessary burden. These 2 months did change my perspective on life as well as the education system itself. And there was always something new to learn every day through my peers, the Ladakh lifestyle and teaching. We learned the delicacies of life and the importance of using resources wisely. The kindness and hospitality of the Ladakhis is immense, and there's still a lot more to learn from. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bindi, for that. I'll just continue a little bit and sort of process Bindi's experiences from my perspective as someone who runs the program. Each year when we do have volunteers, they go through a sort of similar cycle. First, when volunteers arrive, they're sort of in this romantic notion of what will unfold. Then in the first couple of weeks, they realize that it is in fact a much different place to what they're used to, and they have to sort of learn to adapt to the challenges of living in a new environment, the challenges of working in a new environment, and to being in a place where the language you speak is no longer the dominant language of the land. Then right after that, all of our volunteers sort of get in to this new place they're in. They're a little bit more likely to cope with all sorts of new challenges. They're a little more adaptable. They're culturally settled. They're settled in terms of their daily routine and their rhythms of work, and they really start getting things accomplished. Towards the end, almost all volunteers experience this sort of feeling where they don't want to leave, feel like they've just gotten into this community, they've just started making friends, they now know how everything works, and then it's approaching this time when you have to get up and go again. And so we always try towards the end to synthesize what has happened and to process what has happened by doing a little excursion at the end of the program for about a week, where we go out into the mountains, we camp in our really nice sort of luxurious camps with kitchens and toilets and a lot of small hikes and treks to explore parts of Ladakh that the volunteers have not seen yet. And through these exercises at the end, we discuss and we process what the volunteers have been through. This oftentimes helps bring a close to this voluntary chapter, and then it allows volunteers to go back home and to also put into perspective what they're seeing around themselves when they return to the US. So eventually, about half a year to a year later, they have in fact a much better perspective especially if they're continuing in the education field, of how it is in other places of the world, how it is here, and how certain things are superfluous, how certain things are very important. So as a recap of the whole program, basically, volunteers arrive in Delhi, they fly to Leh, we have a 1-week orientation where we teach them about the educational systems, the cultural systems, the history of the region, the importance of the region when it comes to climate change, given that it is a part of the Himalayan glacial system, which is the most landlocked ice in the world outside of the 2 poles. And it then moves into their actual teaching experience and their community life experience, where they work, they live, and they function as part of a small community. There's generally a WorldTeach staff member present to help them translate, to help them get the basics of life all sorted out, and to make them a little more efficient than they would be just on their own. Through their 5 weeks of teaching, they get to engage with the teachers, with the community at large, and with the students. It is relatively flexible in terms of lesson planning and trying to basically adapt and fit in based on the community that you're in. Each community is different, and while they're all really welcoming and really hospitable, on the cultural part, they're different in what the students themselves require from an educational perspective. So fellows sort of learn as they go on how they can do lesson planning and work out their strategic objectives for the time they're there. And then towards the end, we bring everyone back to the town of Leh, where we hang out for about a day, and then we go off for an adventure for 5 or 6 days, and then return again to Leh, and then fly back to Delhi, from where you return home. So a really good insight into the Trans-Himalayas, into Ladakh, into a very different part of India from one that many people think of and view images of and imagine in their minds as what India is like. And it has climate change at the heart of it throughout, just because of the location and of the incredible sustainable practices that are employed in this region from history, just because of its remoteness. Now I'll hand it back over to Liz, who will explain to you some of the more logistical aspects of the process.
Great, thank you, Behzad. So as Behzad and Bindi have talked about, the WorldTeach India program has a wide array of aspects that are really available for you to immerse yourself in the educational aspect and also the community aspect. Throughout that entire time, WorldTeach supports you both through the pre-departure process and during your role there and as an alumni afterwards. For those that are interested in applying for the program, we can go over what we're looking for, because of course we want dedicated individuals who are going to serve the communities that they work in and also the communities that they come back home for. So for our summer programs and our India program, volunteers and applicants, we're looking for those who are native level English speakers, are between the ages of 18 and 74, and of course, again, have flexibility, open mind, patience, really core characteristics that allow us to know that they're going to really explore and be immersed in their experience in their communities and in this program, have a genuine interest in teaching and the effects of climate change. If you're interested in applying for the program, the applications are due for this program April 15th of 2019, so we have a couple more months to go before applications are due. That said, we do rolling applications, so I encourage anybody to get their application materials in between now and April 15th. You can apply at worldteach.org, where you'll be putting in personal data, your personal statement and resume, and you'll also be asked to give a personal reference. That can either be through a reference letter or through a form that we'll have you fill out where we will reach out to your reference as well. And if you want to go to the next page. Thank you. And for the program logistics, the volunteer contribution for this program is $4,990. Now, this is to help support your stay within the program. Things included in that are accommodations, which include housing and meals, your pre-departure preparation from the time that you apply through the time that you depart, visa assistance if necessary when you're applying for your visa for the program. We supply supplemental overseas health and emergency evacuation insurance, which is very important in the event unexpected things happened. Then, of course, what was talked about during this time, orientation, mid-service, and that end-of-service training to help prepare you to live and work within your community, to come back and reflect, and also to cap off your experience and understanding of the 2 months while you are abroad. There's the 24-hour in-country field staff support, and you'll have access to remote teacher quality support as well. Once the program is over, you'll have access to our alumni services and networking. Now on the bottom, a little bit about the fundraising. So for our summer opportunities, many of our volunteers fundraise a majority or even all of their program expenses. So for anybody interested in applying for a program and covering their volunteer costs, I encourage you to reach out to our U.S. office members and ask about fundraising opportunities. We have materials and materials to help guide you through that fundraising process. We find that a lot of volunteers and applicants are able to do it through digital medium or also through their communities back at home, whether that is through religious organizations, school organizations, a variety of different places based on their own networks. For the summer programs, we also find that a lot of volunteers are able to fundraise or get funding through their universities. Since our summer programs are during the summer times, many of our summer participants are university students, and we have a wide range of partnerships with different universities that provide these funding structures. On the top of my head, we have Notre Dame and we have Harvard that fund students to participate in WorldTeach programs. But I don't want to just keep it to the partnerships that I can think off the top of my head. Throughout all the universities, there are quite a few different offices, international engagement offices, language departments that are that may have funding, and we find that a lot of volunteers, when they start to look into the funding opportunities at school, can find opportunities to gather that funding. So again, we encourage individuals to reach out to us for some guidance on volunteering, reach out to their community members, and also reach out to their educational institutions. And to talk, let's see, oh, there we go. So now that we have that done, I'd like to open it up to questions for myself and other panelists. Let's see. I have a question from April Grace Cinco. She's asked, hi, are there Filipino volunteers in WorldTeach? April, yes, we have had volunteers in a variety of our programs from a variety of different countries and passport holders from different countries as well. Off the top of my head, I know that we have had some Filipino volunteers. We haven't had an alumni from the Philippines in the India program, but in a variety of our programs, we had volunteers from all over the world. So thank you for that question. And for anybody interested in asking a question, there are a couple different ways that you can do this. On your dashboard, you can type in your question, or on your dashboard, you can also raise your hand. In that case, I'll unmute you and you can ask the question to the group. So we'll leave it open for just a few more minutes to allow any other questions have. And we have Cindy who is on the line. Hi, Cindy, you're unmuted.
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering, you mentioned that you've got remote access to teachers, and I was wondering how that works if there's one landline.
That is a great question. So the remote access to teacher quality support, there are a few different ways that we do that. So before the volunteers depart, we provide a file for people to download off the internet that has a variety of teaching resources. So they already have that core set of resources that they have access to. That said, while there is only one phone line, there are opportunities where we have been in contact with volunteers. And of course, we're constantly in contact at the U.S. office with the field staff on the ground. So if there are needs on the ground for teacher support, they have access to us in the U.S. office to go through the teacher quality program and also to access some of the resources that we have available for our teachers.
Great, thank you.
Great,
So for an example of that, we had a volunteer this summer who needed to email back and forth with their funding partners who were their university. And so what they did was, because we've got staff member in the village with them, they just went over to the phone. They gave us a call at our office, and we basically composed the email for them, sent it on our behalf, saying, this is from so-and-so person, and the university was happy enough to hear from them, even though it was with one step removed. And in that same way, if they do need to check in on any sort of thing at all, if we've had volunteers who've had upset stomachs, and we've had staff members sort of just be there and take care of them and get them on their feet again. We've had questions come through and be redirected to the US, and then have supplied them with answers. But it is, of course, important to be prepared with the material that you will need physically before you actually get to placement. And so if you need to print out more stuff after you've arrived in Leh during orientation or right before you leave, that's also all very, very possible. So we do have to work within certain means, but in terms of overall communication, it is easy enough to get in touch.
Great, thank you, Behzad. And we have one more question about qualifications and teaching experience. So April has asked if she's qualified, if she's not a teacher by profession, but does have teaching experience under her belt. And that's a great question, April. For our summer programs and our year-long programs, you don't have to be a teacher by profession. You have to have an interest in education. During our orientation and our pre-departure process, we start to set you up with some of that teaching pedagogy that you're going to need. So you have the teaching and the theory behind it, as well as in-country context during orientation to give you skills to be able to be effective in your classroom and with your students. So again, we would like people with an interest in education, but you do not have to be a teacher by profession. So I'd like to thank everybody that has joined us today, and also everybody that has asked questions. April and Cindy, thank you both for that. I'd like to encourage anybody listening now or listening in the future, if you have additional questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us at WorldTeach. You can reach us at admissions@worldteach.org. Again, that's admissions@worldteach.org. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about the program, the application process, or assist you in any way possible. And of course, we encourage you to check out our website at www.worldteach.org to find out more about our India program and serving abroad this summer. So thank you, everybody, and Behzad and Bindi, thank you very much for joining us from the East Coast and from over in Ladakh.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful night. And if you would like to review this webinar, we will have it up by the end of this week on our WorldTeach India website page. Thanks and have a great night.